Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh, hello. Sorry, you caught me reading my emails. How you doing? Welcome to the program. It's the 9th of November. It's a Thursday. It's sunny. Man, the sun, it's sort of like, we haven't seen it. We hadn't seen it in so long, 2 days in a row. It's beautiful, just saying. Heading back into yesterday. Stephen, if you don't stop yawning so much, I'm going to die. You know, it's contagious, and I can't yawn on the show. I don't think I've ever yawned on the show. I used to say I never sneezed on the show, but then that happened. Stephen Caruso, my incredible producer, he works 5,000 different jobs, and he comes in here, and he's sitting right over there, and he's like this. It's okay. I know you can't help it. It's an involuntary response. But it's so hard not to yawn and it's weird how that contagious yawn effect doesn't seem to kick in when I'm on the air. So I used to think that about sneezes, though, so who knows. If I yawn during my own show, it's like when I'm giving a speech or something and there's actually an audience I can see. There could be 400 people in the place. I will somehow see the one person who's like this. Right. Everyone else could be sitting there leaning forward in rapt attention, and somehow my eye goes to. All right, sorry. I can tell Stephen does not like being brought into the. You know, most of my producers like being brought in. You do not. That's interesting. It's cool. Oh, he's got. You can talk, you know. He doesn't want to. Wow. Okay. One of the things I like about the day after the election, the day after the election is that you know, people have more time to digest the results and then to, you know, tell us things that have happened all over the country that may be of interest, that may have not been front and center in the day after. I can tell this is going to be a struggle today, I can tell. But there's so many neat stories. For instance, an African refugee on Tuesday night was elected the mayor of Helena, Montana. Now, what would you bet the black population of Helena, Montana is? It ain't big, I'll tell you that. 10? Just even say 10 people. Wilmot Collins, a refugee from Liberia, came in 1994, and he was elected by an overwhelmingly white and Montana population as the mayor. I so love this kind of thing. He felt a need to run in part because of all these stories have to do with Trump and Trump's denigration of refugees as terrorists, as rapists, as murderers. And this man thought, that is so not true. So he stood up and said to Helena, Montana, this right here is the face of a refugee. And here is my family. This is what refugees look like. We are not terrorists. They elected him mayor. he took out a 16-year incumbent, a guy who had been mayor forever and who everybody assumed would be mayor, in perpetuity, out. And then there's this little historical note which blew me away. He is not the first black person to be elected mayor, not necessarily of Helena, but in Montana. There was another black man who was elected the mayor of an unnamed city in this account. Oh, no, it was Helena. Jesus, I hate that when I am that out of it. He's the second black man to be mayor of Helena, Montana. What? But here's what's even more mind-blowing. The first black mayor of Helena, Montana was elected to that position in 1873. Wow. 1873. What? Pittsburgh, meanwhile, as Stephen is reminding me, has had goose egg black mayors, and I can't see one in the near future. Right? Huh? Nope. Ain't happening here. You know why? Because this city is racist. It just is. That's a fact. But my God, a guy named Edward Johnson was Helena's mayor in 1873. And he was black. 1873. Just saying. Seattle is going to have an openly lesbian mayor. We got such boring mayors around here. I'm sick and tired of it. Bunch of white guys. I'm sick of them. Sick of them. Oh, no. Well, that's not true. We had Sophie. God bless her. What else we got here? Just some little tidbits. We got, Danica Rome, we learned about. That was the transgender woman who unseated that proud homophobe who'd been in a leadership position in the state house in Virginia forever, and that transgender woman won in a Republican-leaning suburb. The reality is what happened Tuesday night was driven in large part by women and minorities. Nobody likes being denigrated and abused, right? Especially when it's unwarranted. And so it was Tuesday night a night of historic wins across the nation. Here, nothing much ever changes, I have to say. Pittsburgh is really like living in a time capsule in many ways. I know we're hot and trendy now, but that has to do with restaurants and, technology. It doesn't have to do with the culture here, which is decidedly racist. Jennifer Foy, a beautiful black woman who had been a public defender, she unseated she won an open seat, again, out of the suburbs of Virginia, won by 26 points, and if that ain't enough, this black woman who won a suburban district by 26 points also managed to give birth to twins during the campaign. Another immigrant from Peru unseated a suburban Republican outside of D.C., trounced him, actually. Elizabeth Guzman trounced this former Army colonel who had served in the state legislature there since 2002. Ashley Bennett. I love these stories. Ashley Bennett was minding her own business after Trump was elected, but then she had to go march with all the other women, which she did. And then this Republican jerk who sat on the county board put on his Facebook page some meme that said that he certainly hoped that all those women in Washington would get home in time to cook dinner. She saw that, and Ashley Bennett thought, I'm taking that guy out. This is a woman who had never run for office before. She stood up, pissed off, ran, and knocked that Republican incumbent out of his seat. Women, ladies, time to save the country. Ladies and minorities, time to save this country. And I think we're certainly feeling like we're going to. Or at least we're making a hell of a try. Just wanted to say. Good stuff. Okay, what do we got here? The black population, Laura, you're great. The black population of Helena, Montana is decidedly more than 10, I want you to know. It's 118. And one of them's the mayor. Okay. Beth writes, I still think the best story was the transgendered woman beating the white guy who proposed Virginia's bathroom bill. Right. You just can't make it up. Some guy says, I'll tell you what bathroom to use. And a transgender woman stands up and says, all right, okay, yeah? And takes him out. I love this. I love this. Beth says, furthermore, I'm shocked that not one copy editor in reporting the story did not say, it's a headline guy that would have said it, Danica Rome flushes the competition. Well, a missed opportunity, to be sure. Yeah, I'm being reminded that Peduto was just reelected. Yeah, did he have anyone running against him? That's Pittsburgh politics. It's like living in the former Soviet Union with a Politburo. Seriously. All right. And Scott brings us back to yesterday's show when we had a little fun with the absurd mottos that states take on. Our latest, so absurd it's beyond belief, is, let me remember, Pennsylvania, pursue your happiness. Right? Is that it? Yeah. Why doesn't pursue your what the? Okay, never mind. Stop. Scott says yesterday's show was great. You were, never mind. Back in the days of Governor Milton Shapp, during the American Bicentennial, there was a statewide Pennsylvania motto contest. Forms were everywhere. Courthouses, state stores, visitor centers. The big winner was, ta-da, Pennsylvania. Naturally. It was? Oh, I wasn't here then. That'd be in the 76. And that's weird because Vermont's slogan is Vermont. Naturally. And I guess it didn't win because You've Got a Friend in Pennsylvania was then hastily picked up. Because Vermont already had the slogan. I see. God. Do you remember back in the late 70s, probably, and early 80s, when practically every institution in America was scammed by some clever consulting company into changing their name to the whatever? Like the Ohio State, the Carnegie. Thus, all of a sudden, were everywhere. And somebody made a shitload of money, is what Scott said. Well, what other thus were there? I'm trying to remember. I can see where it's sort of like, yeah, it's this emphatic kind of a thing that suggests that you and only you, that entity and no other, this is the real deal. The. Is my number askew? Is my number straight? Kinda. There we go. Okay. Here's an interesting bit. Is there something I'm supposed to be talking about? I mean, I know there's lots of stuff, but what you guys need to know is that if there's something you want to hear discussed, then you gotta let me know, okay? Easily done. Lynn at pghcitypaper.com. No. Lynn at, Lynn at, what the? Jesus H! Okay. And you can also call. Gun violence. Interesting piece with tons of data. Is it data or data? You say data and I say data. Lynn at pittsburghcitypaper.com. pghcitypaper.com. It's a bitch getting old. Just you wait till your supple brain starts drying up, ossifying, because that's what's happening. It's actually starting to happen to you right now. You're just unaware. Ha. So, here's an interesting thing that Nicholas Kristof, working with Bill Marsh, whoever that is, says. Liberal opposition to gun control has been an abysmal failure. Will we agree? Will we agree with that? Uh-huh. We certainly will. We have been adamantly opposed forever. We have, the Brady, after Mrs. Brady with her gun violence initiative, and then Gabby Giffords. And after all these horrendous shootings, we squawk, we scream. And not only doesn't it get better, it gets worse, right? So, obviously, whatever it is we are doing is incorrect. Can we agree on that? Yeah. So what these two say is what we got to do is, first of all, rebrand it. We are so bad, so bad. We are as bad at branding as Republicans are good at it. Gun control doesn't work. So these guys argue that it needs to turn into more of a safety issue. Not a I'm going to take your guns. When a gun owner hears gun control, You know what they do? They run out and buy more guns. So our approach was actually a boon to the gun industry. Take it away from that control aspect and bring everybody into the picture by saying this is truly a public health issue of immense proportion, and we need to talk about gun safety or reducing gun violence. Okay? I think they're absolutely right about that. Absolutely right. And then, to use cars as look, cars are potentially incredible killers, right? And they do kill a lot of people every year. But we saw that as a public health issue, and we worked to regulate them, limit access to cars. So you had to be a certain age. You had to have a license. You had to show you were proficient. Although I'm not so sure about that, seeing the way so many people drive. So the death toll was truly reduced by a lot of those, or seat belts, all those safety kinds of things. And we need to do the same thing for guns. But don't let the word gun control out of your mouth. Talk about it as, how are we going to save all these lives that are unnecessarily taken? That's one thing. And then it's understanding how big our problem is. And I think we all know this, that America has more guns than any other country on earth. We're exceptional. We have more guns. It's unclear how many, but it is clear that every human being living in these United States could have access to a gun. There's that many. There's over 300 million. And we are if you look at these bar graphs when it comes to how many guns in a country and then how many deaths by gun in a country, there's nobody close to us. The graphs look absurd. You have to have we're at the top always, and the line goes out, out there. You can barely see it. And everybody else is right here. I mean, the second most gun violent country is like way over here. We are that much a lunatic, crazed nutcase of a country on this issue. An outlier, if there ever was one. So one of the ways, if we adopt a public health approach to trying to get a handle on gun violence, you need data, or data, as the case may be. There's a problem with that because, as you probably know, Congress, at the bidding of the NRA, has literally made it impossible to do any research on gun violence in the United States. It's simply amazing. Imagine if we had an epidemic of some sort. Well, we do. Opioid epidemic. Wouldn't we start, studying how bad is the problem, what are the best, you do. That's what happens if there's a health issue. A lot of people are granted a lot of money to try to get a handle on what it is we're facing. That has never happened with guns, which is probably the big, here. And they put down some numbers here. There have been 400 cases of cholera in the United States in a year, which is really surprising to me. Do you know how many NIH research grants have been given to study and to figure out how to whittle down that 400 number? There are 212 studies going on right now to try to figure out how to get that cholera number down to 0 from 400. There's been some recurring polio cases, some polio coming back in different forms. There's over 129 research grants by just the NIH trying to deal with that. 65 people in the country got rabies last year. You know how many research grants went to try to get a handle on reducing that to 0? From 65 people out of 300 some million. Well, there's 89 heavy-duty research grants going on to deal with that problem. The rabies problem, the cholera problem, the polio problem. Now, what about the gun violence, death kind of problem? Look. There are 3 studies currently. 3 NIH studies. The number of firearm injuries per year in this country, more than 4 million. And again, you look at a graph, and it's like, what? So you have all these deaths, this huge thing of deaths, and how many research studies are being done to try to start getting a handle on it? 3. Then we have rabies. It's like you can't even see the little circle that represents the number of rabies. And how many studies do we have going to get control of the horrible rabies epidemic in this country? 89. We're insane. We are flat out delusional, insane, asleep at the switch. And finally, what is keeping us from actually getting somewhere on this, since the latest polls show? I'm just going to tell you how people who have guns in their houses respond to these questions. I'm not talking about people like me who don't have guns. People who have guns in their households, when asked, do you agree that background checks for gun purchases should be across the board? 93% of gun owners, 93, say yeah. Do you think that there should be laws preventing the mentally ill from ever being able to purchase a gun? Well, duh. Gun owners by 89% say, duh. Of course. Gun owners, 88%, agree with a nationwide ban on the sale of guns to people who have been convicted of violent crimes, of barring gun purchases by people on watch lists, by federal mandatory waiting periods on all gun purchases. 72% of gun owners. That same crowd, 67%, would ban these bump stocks and all these other modification devices that could make a gun more deadly. And yet we can't do it. We can't get anywhere. What does that tell you? Well, first, it clearly tells you that the so-called House of Representatives, as the Founding Fathers termed it, is not. Well, it is. It represents, it's supposed to represent the people, right, of the districts that those congresspeople come from. And quite clearly, they're not. They're representing the gun industry out of fear of the National Rifle Association, which I think should be labeled a terrorist organization. The NRA is probably I hold them responsible for more deaths in this country than ISIS could ever dream of. The NRA, that's what a terrorist organization looks like. Oh, I love this story. Excuse me, just a sec. What? David from the Strip District, the Pennsylvania motto should read, pursue your happiness, keep going. What? Into Ohio? I mean, what? Keep going. Into where? West Virginia? Wilbur Ross. I feel sorry for Wilbur on only for one thing, and he's our Commerce Secretary. Only for one thing, and it's because I've shared the burden with him. His name, Wilbur. His parents saw a defenseless little babe, and they said, let's call him Wilbur. Just like my parents saw this lovely little child and said, we'll call her Ida. So I am always, my heart goes out to people walking around with difficult names. Wilbur, although he looks like a Wilbur. And I'm starting to look like an Ida, I have to admit. So, Wilbur, this is the guy, he is reprehensible, never should have gotten through his confirmation hearings because he was double dealing. He is a crook. He was using his position, inside information to do all kinds of stuff he shouldn't do. Am I thinking of the right guy? Maybe. He also is, of course, because it's sort of hard to get onto Trump's cabinet if you're not, a billionaire. No millionaires need apply. A billionaire. Because Trump likes billionaires. He feels comfortable in the company of billionaires. And Wilbur Ross and Donald Trump, long before they ascended to the positions of power they hold now, were in a club that is, pretty heavy duty, which is they were both on Forbes' list of the 400 wealthiest Americans. Wow. I mean, there's some serious bragging rights. Forbes, however, has just drop-kicked Wilbur off the list completely. He has been demoted to the land of mere millionaires. He somehow inflated his wealth, claiming he was worth $3.7 billion. You know what Forbes magazine says he's worth? $700 million. Now, I got to tell you, if you were worth $700 million, you'd feel rich. But if you were telling everybody you were worth like $4 billion practically, and then a pretty good source like Forbes says, bullshit. You don't even have $1 billion. You just have $700 million. And Ross went nuts. To him, this is the greatest disgrace possible. He protested mightily to Forbes. Here's what Forbes says back. Forbes is confident that $2 billion that Wilbur claimed never even existed. It seems clear that Wilbur, they call him Ross, lied to us, the latest in an apparent sequence of exaggerations, omissions, fabrications, and whoppers that have been going on with Forbes since 2004. In addition to just padding his ego, Ross's machinations helped bolster his standing in a way that translated into business opportunities. And based on our interviews with 10 former employees, who all confirm parts of the same storyline, his penchant for misleading extended to colleagues, investors, resulting in millions of dollars in fines, tens of millions refunded, numerous lawsuits, and the fact of the matter is he counted his investors' $2 billion as his. The guy is worth nowhere near what he said he was, and here's the problem. That'll kill him with Trump. He has been demoted. He's in the cabinet because he said he was a billionaire. Trump likes billionaires and generals. Is that correct? Billionaires and generals. And this is the guy who also, we now find out, has invested a few of his precious millions in doing some venture with Putin's son-in-law. And Forbes also suggests that Wilbur has an awful lot in common with his boss, the Great Orange One, who, by the way, Forbes dropped 92 spots on the Forbes list. Trump is dropping like a stone on the Forbes list. Trump insists he's worth more than the measly $3.1 billion that Forbes says they think he has. But, of course, Trump won't prove it because he can't. Okay. Just saying. Grifters. This bunch of billionaire grifters. Remember Puerto Rico? I was watching one of my stupid shows the other night. Oh, after Jeopardy, right, Wheel of Fortune comes on. And so I have sometimes watched that stupid show. And I think it was last week that some lucky person won a week's vacation in Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, I thought, uh-oh. And then there was this disclaimer put, I guess, on the TV or something that said, this program was recorded before the hurricane. So a poor soul who won the vacation in Puerto Rico, I don't suppose can turn it in for a vacation he can actually take. But meanwhile, there are people actually living, not vacationing, in Puerto Rico, and they're dying in Puerto Rico too. And now it becomes clear that the actual death toll from Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico will never be known. Never. Remember Trump famously bragging about, it's a wonderful feel-good story here. Like, only 17 people died. Something to that effect. Some people are saying it's clearly closer to 1,000. And the thing is, they're still dying. They're still dying as a result of the hurricane because of inability to access potable water, because of no electricity, hence no air conditioning. If you're elderly, if you're sick, that's the kind of thing that'll take you right over the edge. So people, here's what the governor keeps insisting, 55. That's their toll. 55 people, that's the official toll. And everybody from funeral directors to crematoria to people on the street will tell you that is bullshit. There have been more than 900 cremations in just the past 2 months, which is so far and above any number in normal times. You count as a death resulting from the hurricane if somebody is in dire need of help and the ambulance can't get to them because of washed out roads and the person dies. That is a death caused by the hurricane. Someone who died for lack of insulin or lack of oxygen. And what they're saying is doctors there are just saying, lack of oxygen, this and that. They are not, none of these are being counted as hurricane deaths. Just for instance, this September in Puerto Rico, it's been 2 months, and September was when the hurricane happened, right? 472 more people died in September of 2017 than September of 2016. 472. Now, some of those might be truly natural deaths, but give me a break. Give me a break. The storm made landfall on September 20th. And yet the Puerto Rican government still says 55. 55. So you know what FEMA's doing? FEMA's doing something they've never done before. They cannot even keep people sheltered on the island. So they are airlifting and continuing to airlift thousands of Puerto Ricans to the mainland, to shelters in the mainland. Because you can't even shelter people on this island. But I'm sorry, the news cycle has moved on. We run now from massacre to massacre, and we can't, I'm serious, you don't have any, a massacre gets at most 3 days. That's it. And then invariably there's another massacre, right? And you gotta keep on moving. Don't get stuck. I want to share with you a story that, again, none of us are paying any attention to. First of all, because it's not happening in the United States. And since we're not even paying attention to most of what happens in the United States, we sure as hell ain't paying any attention to what's happening in Yemen or what's happening in India. By the way, Yemen is facing an incredible famine brought about by our friends, the Saudis, in large part. Children dying there. Dying. But we got other problems here. India, have you seen what, if you're planning on traveling to India, I would put it on hold. I hope you got trip insurance because, you know, the capital of India, that'd be New Delhi, they have had to close all of their schools for the last week and maybe next week, and who knows, the week after that. Children riding on school buses before the closures could be seen vomiting out of bus windows. Of course, people could be seen vomiting all over the streets of New Delhi. A toxic cloud has descended over India's capital. It literally is so thick that people are dying in car accidents, crashes all over the place because nobody can even see through this black cloud of toxins. And so if you go out onto the street and just start trying to breathe, a lot of people become very nauseous. The air actually irritates the throat, smells like smoke or in some neighborhoods, paint. It gets into your home, whether you have any capacity filters or something to keep it out, and it's killing people. It is a combination of course, emissions from cars and industrial pollution, and then smoke from the rural areas surrounding the capital where they burn fields. People are really sick. New Delhi's chief minister has called the city literally a gas chamber. The World Health Organization says that the pollution levels in New Delhi this week are 30 times what the World Health Organization considers safe. 30 times. Now, you see this happening in Beijing, too, on occasion, right? And it is not unlike what happened in Donora, Pennsylvania, in the late 40s. Is that when that happened? Where essentially a toxic cloud hung over Donora and killed, I think, 100 or so people. Same thing. But New Delhi, we're talking tens of millions of people. Airplanes aren't flying in. I mean, you can't see. Incredible. Just so you know, because that's happening. Here's something I've often noted, and I don't know if psychologists have explained why to us. I've noted it just sort of by virtue of doing a show like this for 30-some years. People respond with more empathy to a dog's suffering than a human's suffering. So if I had just told you that dogs are dying of starvation in Yemen, more of you would have reacted to that than reacted to when I told you that people and children were dying in Yemen. 2 separate studies have found that people absolutely have more empathy for the suffering of dogs than for the suffering of people. And that we are more likely to donate our money to save a homeless dog than a homeless person. And I'm probably guilty of it myself. I don't know. I'm a real animal lover. And what do you think? I mean, I was trying to think of what would be behind that. There's got to be, you can't just put studies like this out without explaining why. Any of you have any ideas? Maybe we always see dogs as innocent. They are not sinners. They are just happy-go-lucky dogs. And we feel a need to protect them. Is that what it is? Or is it just they're cute? Human beings, even children, we can turn away and tune out their suffering much more easily. And would it be because we somehow blame them for their own situation? I mean, I can see that kicking in and the difference between a homeless dog and a homeless person. But a child starving because of wars and blockades, and I don't understand what that is. And I wish media, when they put out these little dollops, would go farther and answer the obvious question. Why? Ed says, how about looking into how many dogs are shot in the country every year? Why? I had a dog who was shot. Frisky. He was a bon vivant, got around town. We'd see Frisky all over the city because that was in the 50s and early 60s, and if you had a dog, you just let him out. You didn't walk the dog. You didn't put a collar and identification on the dog. God knows I never heard of anybody going to a dog groomer. You had a dog, and you let him out. And if he was a hound like Frisky, man, he'd disappear for days on end. Come home smelling a skunk. Come home looking a little beleaguered. Come home with a strange kind of smile on his face. The neighbor across the street, he'd go over to his house. He'd take him off to beer parties. Frisky was a real, I think I know I've talked about him. But some son of a bitch, I don't know if he was peeing on the guy's flowers. I don't know. Some guy walked up to him. The vet said had to have stood like pretty much right on top of him. Because Frisky liked people. He wouldn't have run away. And just filled him full of buckshot, which destroyed his nerves. He was paralyzed. Somebody found him, took him to a veterinarian. He had no ID. We just assumed Frisky was out again, doing whatever it was he did. And eventually the vet thought, I think I know this dog, or somebody. Somehow we were able to take him home. But some son of a bitch shot him. And he eventually died of complications. But remember those days when you could just let a dog out? I think dogs had better lives then. Shorter, perhaps. I don't know. Okay. Well, speaking of animals and how we love them, I have to today hold my cat while it's euthanized. And any of you who've ever been there know how that will rip your heart out. I mean, my heart's been ripped out for weeks about this animal, but I'm confident I'm doing the right thing, but it's just breaks your heart, right? Breaks your heart. Something about animals. But I still find it appalling that we have more empathy for them than for our fellow humans. And I'd sure like somebody to be able to explain that. Oh, I was winding up because I saw I was going by this clock. And I'm sorry. So Ed's trying to explain this. I was thinking you would blend the dog shooting topic into the gun control topic. Well, all right, Ed, but I'm not up to it right now, I guess. You know, the killer in Texas, the most recent killer in Texas, he abused his dog. And we all know that if you abuse an animal, you're very likely to abuse a human. You know, the little kid picking the wings off flies needs to be watched. Anyone who doesn't have a sense of feeling for the suffering of an animal, maybe I'm getting closer to what this is about, is not going to give two hoots about the suffering of a human either. So I just don't know. I'm sorry, Ed, I'm not up to it. Animal deaths is a subject that's heavy on my mind at the moment. And I'm leaving a little early because I looked at the clock. I think it was Ron, right? That you sent me? Was it Ron? And it's a little fast, I guess. We go by the computer. So it's like 2 minutes early. Is that what it is? I'm fine. What the hell? You ain't going to begrudge me 2 minutes, huh? Eh? No? Okay. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm coming back tomorrow because that's what I do. Have a good day.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.